We can talk quick.
Summary of non-public actions from April 23rd, 2014. Mr. York made a motion to approve the non-public minutes of April 9th, 2014 as written. Mr. Barca seconded. The motion carried 4-0-1 with Mr. Miller abstaining. Mr. York made a motion to seal the April 23rd, 2014 non-public minutes first session until February 2015 when the board will decide to further seal said minutes. Mr. Bork seconded. The motion carried 5-0-0. Mr. York made a motion to accept the nomination of Alex Scarelli as CHS English teacher at a salary of $41,557 for 2014-15. Mr. Barca seconded. The motion carried 5-0-0. Mr. York made a motion to accept the nomination of Anna Hebling as the LMS Spanish teacher at a rate of $51,985 for 2014-15. Mrs. Lepore seconded. The motion carried 5-0-0. Mr. York made a motion to accept the nomination of Kathleen Seaver as LMS part-time reading specialist at a salary of $25,992.50 for 2014-15. Mr. Bork seconded. The motion carried 5-0-0. Mr. York made a motion to accept the nomination of Kelly Chambers as LMS nurse at a salary of $49,536 for 2014-15. Mr. Barca seconded. The motion carried 5-0-0. Mr. York made a motion to accept the nomination of John Verity as LMS special education teacher at a salary of $40,370 for 2014-15. Mr. Bork seconded. The motion carried 5-0-0. Mr. York made a motion to accept the nomination of Amy Paradise as LMS special education teacher at a salary of $35,070 for 2014-15. Mr. Barca seconded. The motion carried 5-0-0. Mr. York made a motion to accept the following resignations: Michael Boutsellis, English teacher at CHS; Cheryl Berhane, math teacher at LMS; Patricia Wagoner, librarian at LMS; Allison Ely, special educator at GMS. Mr. Bork seconded. The motion carried 5-0-0. Mr. York made a motion to deny the grievance. Mr. Bork seconded. The motion carried 5-0-0. That's the summary of non-public from April 23rd. Any presentations or recognitions?
Not this evening.
That's a rarity. Any correspondence members received?
Just one from Jason.
Yeah, one today.
Common Core.
Approval of draft minutes from the 23rd.
Make a motion to accept.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstain. First round of community forum. Seeing no one.
We're on a good pace.
I don't think we're going to sustain it, Derek.
We're going to make the puck drop, you know?
Well, see, now we're in trouble. Superintendent's comments.
Oh.
Real quick, I spent some time today. I was fortunate to be at St. A's for part of Project Safeguard. Was at two of the parent presentations. A fabulous program. And a lot of the conversations were about the roles of parents and how to support them. And a lot of the conversations and examples revolved around, I'm going to define it as the role of failure in helping prepare students for their later life. You know, some of the examples of we want our students to be successful and be able to do everything. And we sometimes set ourselves up as parents, and I have multiple children, and can speak of the times that I wish I had done things differently. But by not allowing students to have some negative consequences as a result of choices that they've taken at a younger age, it sometimes sets us up for difficulties down the road. And the example that I was discussing with one of the presenters was, you know, you have to clean your room up by 4 o'clock, right? And then we have to go to your soccer game, and the room's not cleaned up. And we know that if you go to your soccer practice late, you won't get to start the next game, and how horrible would that be? And so we let it go instead of having the natural consequence of, you have to clean up your room, you're going to arrive late, you're going to start on the bench. From a superintendent's perspective, one of the greatest difficulties is dealing with students who have never been allowed to fail until they get to high school. And they're put in a situation where they have to learn with that. And parents who are always supportive and always in support because they love their children, they want them to succeed, have never let that natural consequence happen. And it's tough to do, I know from my own experience. And you know, it was great because the two presenters that I was fortunate to see both gave folks a nice set of perspectives or lenses to look at in terms of their student or their children's behavior and how they can help them become more independent. And I really believe that failure in the short term is one of the best things to assist in success in the longer term. And the worst counterexample to that was the school that made national news because they taught skip roping, jump rope, in physical education with an invisible rope, so every child would achieve success. And I just told the phys ed teachers that I really didn't support that approach. Anyways, that's all for tonight. Thank you very much.
You learn very little from your successes. You learn far more from your failures. School board member comments.
Well, I have a few comments. First one is about Edline. I was at Scouts on Monday night. Happened to be sitting at a table with parents of students across the high school and the middle school. They all enjoyed the fact that they could hop on Edline, and twice since school's been back since break, they've been able to see how their children are doing. None of the high school parents have been able to see anything since April 24th. So I don't know if that's a failure on IT's part, a failure on the teacher's part, or whatever, but these parents were wondering why the LMS can update in a very formal fashion and not so much on the high school side. So if we could encourage that process to be more timely. I know we have a new system that won't be 2 weeks at a time, but it could be more real time, which will be greatly appreciated, I think, by the parents. The other thing is I did send an email to Dr. Cochran this week, and I brought the newspaper with me, Wyndham Independent, but they have, and I don't know if these are full-time positions as it didn't talk about it, but they have just put in place 4 new curriculum directors for grades 6 through 12. They basically put someone in charge, and in this case they did it for science, mathematics, fine arts, and guidance. And I believe they, as I was searching around, I believe they have them for English and things like that. And in reading through that and reading some of the things, I believe that I mean, we've talked about it in the past, but I would like to see the SAU office undertake a process for the board to begin to look at over the summer or into the early part of the fall for budget season, whether or not we need to restructure and redo the job descriptions of the department heads, and whether or not we want to begin to look at that and change that job description and the expectations. As we begin to move into different standards and we expect a more rigorous program for our students, I believe that we need to make sure that the curriculum or department heads or anything are on board with that, but at the same time, they're banding the math program across middle school and high school. They're banding, so it's one smooth process through those 2 schools. And I firmly believe that we need to look at that, and if we need to begin to do other things, whether it's contract related or things like that, we need to begin the process of looking at, you know, how that process would unfold in Litchfield, and the recommendation of the SAU office to begin, making sure that the curriculum that we want is tied to the Common Core standards, which are what we have now, or whatever standards may be in the future, but that we are changing our curriculums and reviewing our curriculums with a leader at all times rather than every 4 or 5 years. And, the same thing in the elementary school process there. I know we worked very hard on the math program in the elementary school. But I think that we're going to expect more from our students, and we're going to talk about some things along that today, that we need to continue to expect the same thing on the teacher side. And I think that occurs as we begin to focus on and direct our attention to what is being taught in the classes and the standards of that curriculum. So I just like to see that be part of the board discussion as we move forward, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. I think it's a good idea.
I think it's a good idea too, actually. It reminded me of something I was actually talking to Dr. Heon about at the last PERC meeting, and I had asked her when was the last time our technology courses and programs have been updated, and we looked at current trends and stuff like that, and I don't think you knew, it was before you were here, I think was the last time they were looked at. So we had heads of each department, with a more consistent look at the programs that we probably be able to keep more up to date. Obviously, one person can't do all that.
So I think it's worth looking at. I mean, I don't think we need full-time directors of all those things, but it might be something that, can be easily put into place and compensation adjusted and things like that to make that type of work better for our community.
We have talked about this before, and I've indicated that I feel that all small districts are really hampered by, the fact that and local control is very good, but it becomes a capacity issue. You have a less than full-time curriculum person, and we have to write, as I've said before, the same amount of curriculum as they do in Manchester and Nashua and larger districts that have multiple people in the curriculum role, and they struggle to get it done. So it is a capacity issue, and I think it might be good not only to look at that going forward, but to sit down and say, where are we in our 7-year cycle? And the notion of most districts run a fairly standard 7-year cycle, 4 core subject areas, but the reality is 7 years from the time you touch math to math again, or computer science to computer science again.
Computer science,
Really,
and things could have come and gone.
yeah. So I think it's very timely, and I think we should probably wrap it into a bigger piece of where are we at the district. We put in the 2013 to 15 board goals as in some ways placeholders, and said that we would get back. And I know in a couple of meetings with board members, I've indicated this really is a time. I believe this summer is going to be really important. We do have a 2-day strategic planning meeting in July with district and building admin, and we're going to have separate building day-long meetings between now and then. But to me, this is kind of the launching point for the next 3 to 5 years of long-term plan. And my goal would be to have that as one of the major pieces of a plan that comes out of the summer work and into fall for the board's review and input at that point in time.
Other comments? I just want to say I sent to everybody a copy of the senior activities, and I'm assuming that, Lori will talk a little bit about it, but just there's a lot going on over the next 30 days or so at the high school, and anything that you can take in, I think you'll be pleased with what you see, and it's just an opportunity to watch the students shine. Of particular importance, I think, is the senior project night, when the kids are here to present, their senior project. And I know we've had questions about the utility, or, should we continue the sophomore senior project paradigm that we're running in now. It's just an opportunity to come in and personally see what students have done and have them tell you what it's about. So I would just encourage members to take advantage of and attend what they can over the next 30 days, including up through graduation, both here and then promotion at the middle school. Which takes us to principals' reports. GMS up first.
All right, thank you. I've submitted a written report, but I'm going to focus my talking on something we're really excited about and was supported through the budget process, and that is the technology education program position. So we have been moving ahead on that. First of all, location. We did make the determination that the lab will be in room 18, which is currently a grade 2 classroom. It's right adjacent to the Library Media Center. It's also adjacent to a server hub, so there's a lot of benefits for that room. It's in the middle of the building, so it's halfway between grade 1 and the grade 1-2 wing and the 3-4 wing. It also has a small area in the back of the room that can be used as a desk space for the IT people. Right now, I have them sharing a non-instructional area with a Title I tutor part-time. So it's not an ideal situation, but this will be much better. I met with Dave and Kyle in April to discuss the timing of the changeover and coordinate support from the maintenance staff for emptying, cleaning, and preparing the room. As discussed earlier, the students who will directly benefit from this class, it will be the 3rd and 4th graders. They will have computer class scheduled as one of their specials. Anyone who's had children or does now in the elementary in recent years knows that we have 4 specials. Typically, we have music, art, PE, and library. So what we're going to have to do is have a 2-part schedule. It'll be a 5-day schedule for grades 3 and 4, and a 4-day schedule for grades K, 1, and 2 for their 4 classes. The case through 2 students will not have computer class as a special, but they will have access to the teacher for the second half of the teacher's day. From 10:10 to 12 o'clock, the teacher will be available for tech integration kind of things. That is the plan. And that could be in a regular classroom, or another teacher could bring the classroom to the lab. So we're quite excited about that opportunity. It'll also be available after 10:10, actually, until the end of the school day, for a teacher to bring students to the class and use the computer bank for a project they might do independently. And I think that's it about scheduling. Content, as was just mentioned, actually, there hasn't been a lot of review until this year. We're working on IT standards. And so as part of the process of looking for the right candidate, Julie, Dr. Heon was kind enough to give me a draft of what we're looking for. So I just want to share that these are the things we anticipate will be covered in the 3-4 computer class. So certainly proficiency with basic hardware operations, and again, this is a draft, but it's what we kept in mind during our recent interviews, including use of devices, navigation skills, and care of equipment. Using word processing is certainly part of what they'll be working in order to do a piece of writing appropriate for grade 3. Doing research, using the locating information on sites bookmarked by the teacher and student-found sites. Digital citizenship will be part of what we teach. Students will need to learn respectful use of materials and equipment, safe cooperative use of technology, and responsible use of technology, including social media and email. We don't currently have student email at the elementary, but the underlying standards of good behavior on the internet will be important for them to begin to learn. A lot of students do use social media or email or texting outside of school, even at the elementary. It'll be important that they understand how the internet connects them to the world at large. And we want them to use the computer class and opportunity to develop an authentic project using available digital tools. And the other piece is using data and the computer to assist in decision-making, both through graphs, charts, and visible data, quantitative kind of things that a computer can help with. So we are on our way and quite excited about this. I think there'll be a great deal of benefits. Another piece that's not explicitly in the standards, but I do see it as an important piece of the class for grades 3 and 4 in particular, that they learn some of the specific functions that they will be faced with on the Smarter Balanced Assessment. It really is quite different what's done on that compared to what 3rd and 4th graders typically do on a board process. As you've seen, it's much more involved than that. So that's where we are with that. And Kyle put some information in the technology report briefly, just about having come over where we stand with technology per se.
Would basic keyboarding skills be included in the basic hardware operations?
Yes, I thought I mentioned keyboarding.
You might have,
skills.
when I was taking notes, I might have missed
It may
it.
have been too quick, but yes, I think keyboarding skills are critical. As we mentioned, our students, for the kneecap assessment, they do a longhand essay. That's what they're accustomed to doing.
Yeah.
But what they have no practice formally, they may informally, is typing a narrative, which is what they'll be expected to do in the Smarter Balanced Assessment. So we want it to be about their writing ability, not about their typing ability.
Other questions for Mr. Thompson, either on the
So
technology or on the written?
I take it
report?
we've found the funds in the budget to put in the
Where
computer
there's-
center?
Where there's a will, there's a way. Where there's no will, there's another way.
Okay. That's fine. I don't know if we had a final discussion of exactly how we were going to fill that room for that teacher, but I take it that discussions have occurred, that this is going to occur then.
Is there any retrofitting that has to happen power-wise or anything in that room to?
Not a lot, because one of the benefits, when I met with Dave and Kyle explained that in a regular desktop environment, you would need to have a line, a dedicated line for every 2 machines, I believe is what he said, so as not to keep tripping the thing. But you can actually, because they require so little energy, I believe what he said is you can run the entire computer lab with thin clients with only two dedicated lines. So there might be minimal retrofitting, and I couldn't tell you whether the lines in that room currently are already dedicated to that room. I don't know the answer to that.
We originally budgeted $1,200 for electrical upgrades if needed for both the computer capacity and also the cooling capacity. So I know that was in there in case it was required.
It looks like GMS is going to have a busy month, too,
Oh, yes.
based on your report.
And I didn't think you would want to hear every one of those calendar events, but it's kind of nonstop.
Right out to the 20th. So Mr. Lecklider is not here for LMS. So
Well, I have a message from LMS. They got off well on Tuesday, but right now they are on a cruise in the Potomac River,
there will be a
enjoying
penalty
themselves
next meeting.
for the, I asked Mr. Leclerc where he was going to be on Wednesday night as we were discussing his report, and he told me he'd be cruising the Potomac River for a dinner show, so.
I think that's like a dinner dance thing, if I remember correctly. And I said, do they actually dance? And he said, oh, yeah.
They took 3 buses down, with 50 people a bus, so.
Did you breakfast them
We
again?
breakfasted them again. It was, I actually had Kylie and Joshua out there handing out bags at 5:30 in the morning, so.
They should somehow find a way to combine the Krispy Kreme fundraiser with the
Yeah,
trip
that,
to DC.
yeah, that bus will be really good about an hour and a half down the road with 8th graders. Boing, boing, boing.
Well, if they bounce off the walls for about 20 minutes, then they'd all be asleep.
Yeah.
I did speak to one parent today who said they'd never received so many texts in one day from their child on that bus trip down.
Hopefully good ones.
Bored silly.
Oh, okay, that's good.
Well, it was
Until the
funny.
battery died.
It was funny. I saw them grab the movie Frozen to put up on screen. 8th grade, I'm thinking Frozen is like, Josh was like that, I don't know, he's like nothing to do with it. So I thought 8th graders watching Frozen was gonna be an interesting ride down, I mean, it got them to Connecticut or something, before there was a mutiny.
8 or 7? No, 7. Sorry, it is 8. Yeah, 7s were at
Project
St.
Six.
A's
That's the
today.
point where they almost sing like that. That's-
I got it on YouTube, every song.
So there is a written report Mr. Leckliter submitted before he did jaunt off. So if there are questions, we can certainly ask Dr. Cochran to carry them back. We can have them addressed for next time, or maybe emailed, so. Which takes us to CHS.
So we have some old business. Last time I was here, we talked about the 28 diploma with distinction for 2016. And you asked for time to consider that. So I think that's just a vote from the school board. Or do you want more time, or do you want to?
So when you say the weighted GPA, that's the weighting that you get for honors or AP?
My only comment about that was that I was wondering if we need to identify, because the weighting scale sometimes changes over time, that if the weighting scale changes, then the required GPA should be changed. So I don't know if you want to say minimum weighted GPA of a 3.8 based on a whatever scale we have now, just so as a reminder, if we ever change the scale again, we'd have to come back and look at resetting this. Does that make sense? I know you brought it up in the case of,
Yeah.
of some of the student awards.
Yeah.
I think it's a parallel here.
Yeah, I think that it would somehow reference what it currently is. I don't know how it's, I don't think you can reference it by a year, but
Well, what's the max now for an AP course? The max weighted
5?
5. So normally you'd reference as 3.80 out of a weighted scale of 5 point, whatever. That way it just kind of triggers if you
I know we talked a
change.
little bit about, did we want to say something about, no discipline, and our committee had said we really just wanted to go on the GPA and the grades, because all kids make mistakes, and so we didn't really want to, our kids do community service with the sophomore projects, they, do the senior projects. And the other thing we did consider, we talked about last time, did we want to have a 20 credit diploma also? And at this time, the committee had decided no, but if you wanted us to go back and relook at that, we would be willing to do that also.
Just a couple of thoughts that I have on it. For the credits to count for honors, they should have to pass the AP exam, not school AP classes. But if they're taking AP classes and we're going to be having a diploma with distinction, the expectation should be that they have passed the exam, the AP exams. So in this case, they'd have to pass 2 of them.
I disagree with that, because if you're taking an AP course and you do pretty well in it, and well enough so that you get, say, a 3.8, you may not necessarily pass the AP exam. And when you say pass, I think you're given a score of 1 to 5.
Whatever
or 2 to 5 or something like that.
Whatever gets
So-
them the college credit.
But it varies.
But colleges don't always accept it. You might have
And
a
it does
college
vary.
that will only accept 5s, and somebody might have gotten a 4. And
Well,
so,
but that's, I mean, I'm not saying it has to be accepted by a college, I'm just saying that they have to have a score that would be accepted
But
in a
but
college
it's-
if they did that.
I think that's too squishy a standard. I would say if they took the AP class, because they've got the rigor there. If they took the class, they did the work, and they passed the class, they should be getting the credit. What a college does with the AP test itself, the results of the AP test, is something different. And some kids opt not to take the AP exam. Some kids may not feel quite comfortable with it, they don't want to do it. And there's a cost to that. So-
And I totally 100% agree with that. However, we're putting out a diploma of distinction. Either the 3.8 needs to be raised because an AP class, somebody could be average, and then all of a sudden get in some AP classes, get A's, and now they get 5, so they move their number into that. So the process has to be hard. They can do all what you're saying and get the 24 credit regular diploma and do that, and that's fine, because that's there. This is for the students who we want to recognize are the best of the best, and doing that
John,
process.
I don't think the students are gonna be average. They're gonna be taking the AP classes and pulling fives.
I understand that.
And-
And so,
But
so setting a bar of expectations, they don't want to take the exams, that's
I'm
fine.
not talking
But
about the exam, but I'm just talking about the AP courses.
That's, but
you
then
just
that's
said- you
fine,
just
then
said
there's,
it
there's a
doesn't have to be
diploma
average.
for them.
If I may, the scores don't come out till July.
That's what I was gonna say.
Okay.
The scores don't come out till July.
So
So
your
our
seniors-
seniors would not be able to, that's what I was trying to say.
But the juniors
We
would-
never get scores until July, and sometimes end of July, so
But I
we
don't-
wouldn't be able to give them a diploma.
Excuse me, sorry. I don't want to see any kid, say a junior takes an AP, or even sophomores, if sophomores start taking APs, I wouldn't want to see any child harmed in any way because they couldn't afford to take the AP exam, because there is a cost to the AP exam, and there might be families that can't afford to pay.
But I don't
the
believe
cost,
that's
but
an
the child's
issue.
done the work. Oh, it is. I think
Well, no, it isn't, because I believe that there's processes in place here at the school to take care of that process if there's a hardship.
But I still don't think that you should require somebody to take the AP exam. People might want the rigor of the
I am-
AP classes,
I am-
but not need to take the AP exam.
I understand that the scores will be to July, so that makes it harder in that conversation. I don't think I don't think the rigor is hard enough. It should at least be at 3.92, which is where you recognize your students of distinction with a
So
thing.
do you want me to bring it back to the committee, or
Well-
is everyone feel that way?
Well, so, I guess my viewpoint on this should be something that 10% or less achieve. It should be something that
10%?
I mean, I'm just tossing the number out. You may argue 15, somebody may argue 25. I just think when you look, if you're gonna set something up as a diploma with distinction, it should be something that half of the class is not gonna achieve, because then you've sufficiently watered it down such that it's not really a diploma of distinction. Somebody could,
I'd be pretty pleased with half the class getting it.
Exactly. I was
Well-
going to say, what we want is kids to strive to meet
no,
that. And so
well, I
hopefully-
do, but so I would ask Lori, how many students in this year's senior class had greater than a 3.8?
I would have to,
I'm
if Jody
gonna-
was here,
I'm gonna bet you it's 25 or more.
it is. It
That's
is. You're-
25%.
But how many of those have 28 credits too?
Well, that's the other thing, but a
I
lot.
would bet you every
We have-
one of them
We
does.
have, we have, and the other thing we were trying to encourage is students to, take more courses, but when we looked at it, we have students have 32 credits, 31 credits, but we're really
To raise the
happy,
credits.
Make
Make it 30 credits. Make it something that they have to strive for. I mean, I'm with Dennis. I mean, I'm not gonna say 10%, I'm not saying, but it can't be, if 100% of the students do it, then we've achieved success and we're doing exactly what we're supposed to be doing, and we can say that's great. But it can't be that, if that's your goal, if getting that diploma is important, then there has to be rigorous steps, because when they go off to college and that they want to get certain degrees of honors and stuff, they have certain requirements. They have to achieve these things. They don't give those things out for just everybody. I mean, they personally make it as hard as they can to achieve this. Now, I don't think we need to make this as hard as it can, so it's impossible to achieve. But I would not vote yes the way it stands today, even though I totally support the concept of the idea. I don't think it's rigorous enough.
One thing that I'm wondering about, and maybe this speaks to what John is talking about, is that 6 or more credits from honors or AP courses. It sounds low to me, and because I think what can happen is you can have kids that don't take the most challenging courses, and then manage to get 6 or more credits in honors or AP, and so they may have had an easier time than someone who is taking honors through all the way through from
We were
freshman
thinking of
all
the
the way.
VOC kids, that's what we had the discussion on, the VOC kids, because the VOC kids have a harder time getting, so if they wanted to go and say, be in the nursing program at South, that's a really rigorous program, but that, they're not going to be taking AP classes. So that's what the committee talked about there.
Okay.
They were just trying to think of those exceptions to the rules.
But I suppose maybe what would be considered an honors class. So something
Right.
that's particularly rigorous would have the weight of an honors class. If it's taken in another school where we don't offer that with the nursing program, that seems to make sense. But to me, it has more to do with the rigor of the classes that
The
the
rigors
people are
of the
taking,
classes.
more than whether or not they take the AP exam after
I
the
would
end of
agree
the
with
AP.
that.
I say, just have they gone through and taken the most difficult course of study that they could do. And that's what colleges are looking for. They want to see the rigor. They want to see if kids have challenged themselves from the beginning of their freshman year all the way through. That's what matters. And so I would say, I think that diploma has to show that there was more of the credits came from honors or AP courses or honors equivalent type courses. And I think
Yep, that's no
you'd have to
problem.
decide what would be an honors equivalent, but I would like to see more of the credits from the more rigorous courses personally.
What I will do is, we'll go back to committee and we can gather information. I think Dennis made some points, like, let's just look at this graduating class and.
It's one data point, but
We can just try to, put a couple different scenarios together and come back to the board,
I did like John's suggestion of aligning it with the academic excellence.
Yeah, I like that too.
GPA,
I thought that was good. I thought that was
We're
really
going to
good.
honor you here and you get the diploma with distinction.
Right, I thought that was
Another
very good.
piece that I would recommend back to the committee is they have to participate in New Hampshire Scholars.
Yep,
Because that's free, doesn't cost anything, and you basically sign up to do more than the basic diploma to be part of the New Hampshire Scholars.
which I think New Hampshire Scholars has been a wonderful thing for New Hampshire, but also for Campbell, because New Hampshire Scholars, we got on board in 2008, and the first year we had something like 12 kids, and now we have like 40 students in this graduating class who are New Hampshire Scholars, which means that they're taking the most rigorous classes, and I think once we start recognizing and we start saying, if you do this, this is what's going to happen. It was a great day yesterday for New Hampshire, to see how many kids are taking all of those classes to be classified as a scholar.
But we had one of the largest groups
We did.
there, yes, like
we didn't
Manchester
even- and we
Memorial
didn't
had
even
like
have-
5 kids.
And we didn't even have everybody. That was because some of our kids were so worried about school, they wouldn't go.
I talked to 2 kids, and he said, I have an AP
have
test
too much
Monday,
work
I
to
have
do.
an
I
AP
can't go
test
to New
Wednesday.
Hampshire
I can't
Scholars."
go, and then there was something going on Thursday. He goes, I gotta go to school at least one day this week.
But I love those kids.
It would be wonderful for Campbell High School to get the reputation of having a number of students who are New Hampshire scholars and do this kind of work.
Can I just make a suggestion, Lori, that if you could have Jody put together a little chart of what honors courses are available to students as they go through the normal sequence. So that'll give us some guideline as to what would be the appropriate number of honors
Yeah, that
courses.
would make sense.
If a lot of kids are taking 12 honors courses as opposed to 9, then we may want to decide where that number of honors or AP courses is set at. That might be helpful
And-
information for the board.
And the other thing is, while I understand you're going to asphyxiate a different star or emblem on their thing, I also believe you need to recognize the students at graduation, whether it be with
In the
a
book
different
or-
hat, a different tassel, a different robe, and they need to be either called first or called last and recognized at graduation for this thing. I mean, because it's the only way to enforce the importance of this is to show it across the process. Now, I understand that that may not be the most politically correct thing, but it is the process of recognizing excellence. And I would encourage across LMS and in GMS, as you move students through the process, that they begin to look at things where students are recognized for being great students. Because, you know, we're always, if you hear it once, you hear it 1,000 times. You need to challenge the best students, and we also need to recognize them, and we need to find a way so that it's not, you know, embarrassing or whatever. But in high school, I mean, I firmly believe that you know, there's a correct way to do it. I may not be articulating it correctly, but we need to recognize these students in some fashion, in some way, even if they're intertwined and you decide to do that. They have to be recognized in the mix, or however you want to do that.
A lot of colleges
On
do
that.
like a chord.
They did a chord.
National
I just went to my son's
They do the
graduation.
chords, and I think that's really nice, you know, an honors chord. And-
Well, they had an honors chord, and then they have what they call Alpha Beta Kappa
Yep,
for the Honor Society. And at the start of graduation, they said, we're going to call up the Alpha Beta Kappas. And that's when they got their chord to add,
oh, nice.
that's how they got that recognition that John was talking about.
Very nice, that's a good way
They
to
did
do
it, they did it first before they did anything else, any speakers, and said, we want to honor these students, and they called them up. They didn't have to say anything or do anything, you just get a chord and sit back
Chord,
down.
very nice.
Lori, could you please articulate to the committee and the staff that the board and the superintendent, I think we all are very supportive of this idea, and the board just wants, you know, more information,
Right.
so that they
Absolutely.
have a little bit more context. I'm sure the committee
think
spent a
it's
lot of
great.
time on this, and they had the information, you know, to come to this decision. I think the board just wants that information, to be able to say, we're very comfortable with this, and so on.
Absolutely, I think it was good discussion.
And I am supportive, by the way. I know I spoke about whether or not we wanted to do the behavioral piece, and I'm very comfortable with the committee's decision to not include it. And you know, I think it's a sound rationale.
The other piece that was old business was our international high school. John, you asked a question about, was there fees for the family? And I said I thought there was, I would get back to you. Yes, there is a fee for the family. The annual home fees, it's based on 46 weeks, $200 a week. It's $9,200 that they pay. It's going to,
Well, so, just so I understand,
yes,
who's paying the $200?
the family of
The sending family?
The
Yes.
sending family.
Okay. I was trying to figure out why anybody was doing this.
So the school.
cost
Send money back to the town, back to
10
the
grand a
country.
year, okay.
The school, you know, would get $12,384.14 per student, so they would pay tuition. Right now, it can only be for a year, but we're hoping that there will be some law changes, and it would be longer than a year if they could come and spend 3 years here and then go to American college. Our fees would be $1,700 for the application fees, plus they have to do a site visit, which is $655, to determine if your high school is a high school that it's a very selective, they want a very selective high schools. Jody and I spent some time with Philip Bradley on the phone. He thinks that our school would be a great fit for many reasons. But there is a chance that we could be rejected. You know, I just want everyone to know that. But we did talk about, you wanted more time, and we have time, but I just wanted to know if you had any more questions, or were you, you know, did you want us to move forward with the application process? Because the application process is, you know, it doesn't happen overnight and can be a long process. There's a lot of information too on the Bo website, because Bo is already there. So, you know, John Hausmeyer's the principal of Bo, has done his whole doctorate on this program, and they're moving forward.
That would not impact anybody that's doing like a foreign exchange student. You wouldn't see that impacting any of that process at all here at Campbell if a family wanted to
No.
continue or do that or
No,
anything like that?
no, probably eventually what we do is, this would be, right now, if you take a exchange student, it's all, the money comes from your family, and the family that pays the fee, they pay it to an international
Right.
company. This company gives the money to the schools and to the families that are taking them. So, when I met with John Hausmeyers, who I actually had worked with in Merrimack, it just seemed like Bo was in the same boat that we are. They're a very similar school, they're very similar in size, and they were worried about a decrease in population. And so, if we were to get 5 students, if you looked at the money that we would be able to bring in, it's not going to really, like Dennis said last time, it's not going to cost us because it would just be an extra student in a class that's not overcrowded.
Right.
If we had an overcrowded problem, then we probably wouldn't want to do this. So we wouldn't be looking at hiring new staff, we would just be looking at filling the classrooms.
Well, I'll make a motion if you do from the board to encourage or have the Campbell administration continue the process.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any other discussion?
I just have one quick question about
Sure.
liability. Not that the kids that would come over would be committing crimes or anything, but who would be liable for their behavior? Is it the family? Is it the school? Is it a shared liability for some, if they come over and commit
According
crimes?
to John Hausmeyers, everyone that comes over is from, it's a rigorous application process, but the family would fly, pay all legal fees, and they would go home immediately.
Okay.
So if there is any issues, and that's how it is right now, we've had students in the
They would have to deal with whatever
issue,
issue is, then they would fly home.
and they, okay, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, they wouldn't be flying home to get out of Dodge real quick.
Right. Right, correct.
Okay, thank you.
Correct. Okay, and then,
Oh, hang on a second.
Okay.
Any other discussion?
Oh, sorry.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? Thank you.
Thank you. Finally, I just wanted to talk briefly about summer school. And this year, we would like to propose some changes in summer school. The first
There's no
proposal would be, currently, we charge $150 per summer school. We'd like to bring it down to $125 because it's a competency recovery program. Our students have 2 options for summer school. They can go to the Campbell Summer School, and if they have a competency that they failed, they go to summer school and they recover the competency. And what that looks like is the directors of summer school meet with, they go and gather all the Fs, and they meet with the teachers of the students that failed. They find out what competencies they're missing. They send letters home, and the students attend summer school to regain the competency. It's going to be the same thing, except for what they would like to do is have each week they would have a concentration week. So week 1 would be social studies. So if you failed a social studies competency, you would come to summer school that week. Now, if you needed more time, because some students might need more time, they would go into the second week, and they would still finish their work. Week 2 would be English, week 3 would be math, and the final week would be science, ending on August 1st, but knowing that they might have to extend, especially the science group who needs more time. And the teachers are thinking is that this way, there is a greater opportunity for credit recovery. There's more flexibility for parents, because right now, parents are sending their kids to summer school for 4 weeks, and they can't make any vacation plans, and so the summer school teachers have been trying to work around the parents' vacations. I already have a place in Maine, they can't come week 2. And they go, okay, but it really is hard for them to balance. So they're really trying to meet the parents' needs. And the students would be able to actually, if they failed a lot of classes, they'd be able to recover, more competency recovery. So that's our proposal.
I did have a nice conversation with Aaron and Heidi, who have run summer school for the last several years.
Several years.
Very well thought out proposal. I support it completely. It's based on responding to student needs, trying to give students the opportunity, and only the opportunity, to have a second chance to demonstrate. And it actually gives them, I think, more opportunity to do some more instruction and organize their time better. So it is putting more of a focus, I think, on the things that we want summer school to be, and still holding kids to the normal standards that we have for students getting credits. So I very much support it. I think it's a well thought out proposal, and it's based on student need. And I'm not sure if the board has to approve anything as much as this is information. We wanted to talk about some programmatic things. So this is what the high school is going to move forward with the summer school model. We'll try it. I'm very hopeful that it'll make a significant difference for at least a small number of students. And lowering the price may, make it more doable for, some people.
So, what is the cost to the district, just for the teachers?
There is no, they're self-funded. So summer school is completely self-funded.
Okay, so, so you have 3 students that need math, and they're gonna be there for 5 days, they pay $375, and the teacher who's there, that's what that teacher gets, or?
They pay $125 for math.
Okay.
So, for each competency that they, if you failed 2 competencies, you would go to summer school, you'd only pay the $125.
No, I understand that, but I
Okay.
mean, how is I understand it's self, but how is the compensation?
So at the end of the summer, when we get all the money in and we make sure that there's like no bounce checks.
Right.
That's when we pay the summer school teachers.
summer school
directors.
teachers.
And this will be better for them actually because right now, because you have to have HQT teacher, so a math teacher would be there for the 4 weeks and they would get a stipend. So now they'll be there for the week, and then if they have to go a few more days into the extra week, it's going to be based on this stipend. So we think that it's just going to be more cost efficient, better run, and people will be a lot happier with the summer school program.
And are students already being identified that are going to need this, so that letters or things are being sent to parents to begin the process of saying, hey, this is the week that this is occurring and your son or daughter needs to make plans to be here, this is the cost and that is occurring now because things that they've not done in semester 1 or this year where the competencies are already come and gone?
Yeah, they already know the semester 1 people, so they could send out a quick postcard. Usually they wait until they figure out like what the students are going to need, and then they find out if the parent wants to send them, because the directors of summer school actually have to go to individual teacher. It's different than, like the national program where you go and take the course again.
Right.
This one, they would go and get the packet from the teacher, like what do they need to do, what do they need to complete, how are they going to complete it? So the teacher that they have actually gives the director, and then the HQT teacher oversees it. But like Dr. Cochran said, because we're concentrating on it, there will be more teaching and one-on-one instruction during that time, instead of having, 29 students and they're all doing different things.
Right. It'll be 5 students doing math, and then the next
Right.
week will be
Right,
whatever students are.
exactly.
And I take it, is there a plan, is there a plan in place where if a student needs this and they don't have the $125, is there a plan in
If they're
place?
free lunch, we take care of it. It's in our budget, and it's under, alternative programming, but anybody who's free, and if we have someone who's free and reduced, and we know that they need it, we make sure that they have it. We even support the kids.
All 3 of the schools are very good with that.
No.
The other thing is, I think this is one of those cases where this is a timely intervention. It's fairly inexpensive to the district or the school. And if there's been a particular year, because there's a circumstance, there is a small cost to the school or district, I think it's well worth it. One of the things that might be helpful to look at is actually starting competency recovery in half-credit courses in the second semester. So if someone fails a competency in, and I know we've had some conversations about that, and you can't do everything at once, but I like this proposal, but the timeliness of it is crucial. If the student doesn't get the remediation quickly enough, then you're having to go back and build from a
So
different
somebody
base.
who failed one of the core classes his freshman year, English, let's say, didn't pass English, they can't come in and take an English class in a week,
No.
get a full credit
No.
that will
no.
move them from being a freshman to a sophomore instead of still being a freshman because they haven't passed enough credits.
Right, so, you know, it would only be if you failed the competency, you would need competency recovery. Someone who, you know, had a 20 in the class and failed the class, what we would do with that student is we would send them to Nashua,
Okay.
where they would have to
They're taking a
read-
full class
They would
there.
take a full class.
So our aspect here is we're only, so somebody passes 5 out of 6 competencies, we're just gonna focus on that one competency there. We're not going to try to get a class done.
Nope.
in
That's-
a week.
That's exactly
Okay.
right. And that's why we send kids to two, I think it's confusing
summer school.
sometimes for parents, but that's exactly why, you know, we send kids in 2 different directions. We look at what they need, and then we, you know, base where we're sending them based
So
on
if we
that.
send them to those other school, Nashua.
Nashua.
Are we paying for that class?
They have to pay some, and we have to pay some. We have a grant that we wrote through the state of New Hampshire, so the state of New Hampshire, because it's considered an alternative program, pays 75%. I think Frank gets a check in December. Like, for example, our Londonderry Night School kids, we pay for them. We have 7 kids graduating from Londonderry Night in June. Another really positive thing is that I was told Dr. Cochran the other day, we have a student that just completed his GED. He was a high school dropout. He counted as a dropout. He got himself together, and just last week he completed his GED. So I was very
Excellent.
excited about that, because that's really good news when we have, so we're able to go back and change our dropout. And we got better statistics, but it's really about him making it and never quitting.
And I've already spoken to Bill Hicks, and the date of the Londonderry Night School graduation
Yes.
is in my calendar. I'll be able to make it this year.
Good, it's really, it's wonderful that we have all kinds of opportunities for our students, you know, that we hold the line. If they don't have the credits, you know, they don't graduate, but we certainly continue to believe in them and try to get them through.
There's also VLAX they can use for credit recovery
Yes,
for the
Correct.
first semester, or even over the summer, they can
even over in the
do,
summer,
they can do a VLAX course to recover
Yes.
that credit.
yes.
Anything else for Lori? Well,
Go
Where's our
Bruins.
students?
1-0 Canadians.
Oh, it is?
Where's our students?
I don't know, I think they.
I think they're watching the hockey game.
I really think that they are so exhausted because they took so many AP tests.
Oh, that's
They
true.
were,
Yeah, that's true.
It's been a
Both
busy
of
week.
them, you know, have been really, they spent a lot of time studying and preparing.
Well, you know, they only have one meeting left.
Right, I'll make
Because
sure.
then they'll be
they're here.
graduate.
I'll
and,
make
you
sure
know,
they're here for the
I don't think
next
they're gonna
meeting.
show up and see us in June.
After the 13th, definitely not.
Dennis, you know, you just disappointed everybody who's DVRing the game to watch us, right?
I know.
Apologize to your wife. No! They're covering their ears. Which takes us into curriculum. Dr. Heon.
Okay. Start with the quick ones, if we may, from Perk. Fourth grade has a request to purchase the book Pi. Mr. Thompson, were you able to bring that book with you? It was quickly passed around there.
Yes.
This is for their language arts program. Perk recommends the book.
Part of the discussion on this.
Yes, I was. Yeah, it seems like it's a, I haven't had a chance to read it yet, but I did bring it home so I could read it, but just scanning through it and stuff, it seems like a, I think it was time or Excel chart.
It is high.
But it's got, it
That
has an
band
interesting,
goes
yeah.
from the 700s to 970, and this is a 930, so that's for that aspect of it. It's also realistic fiction, which is highly recommended that we, rather than your sort of fantasy,
That's
other
your-
kinds of
by the way, I don't
fiction.
walk home with it. That's what I signed with.
It seems like it's a good story too. Having a daughter who will be a fourth grader next year, it seems like it's gonna,
I don't want
it'll
to
be something
take
that'll
it
be
home.
challenging for her, but something that would also interest her, so.
Engaging.
And they
Yeah.
should engage in that, that's nice.
It did write very nice.
Do you want me to go through all of these first, just with a little review, and then people can think about them? Or do you want to deliberate one by one?
Certainly.
Given that PERC is a committee established by the board and has a board member and the director of curriculum on it, I'm wondering if the board would consider taking the PERC recommendations section of the curriculum report and putting it in as a consent agenda item, which you would basically say, the board chair would say, is there anything that you'd want removed from the consent agenda, and if not, simply vote on. But that is premised on making sure that we have that information to the board in time for them to review it. We did have some PERC meetings the PERC meetings were on the Wednesday after school, and then recommendations came. If we were able to get the recommendations up on the Friday afternoon so that the board could review them over the weekend or early week, perhaps ask any questions that they have of Julie, it would speed things up a lot. But we're now spending a lot of time re-reviewing stuff that a duly, appointed committee of the board, including a board member, has already approved. So I think you need a mechanism, because they are a committee that report back to the board. But I think the normal circumstance is that we have faith that they've done their due diligence. We have some questions about this one and that one, but the others are, would stay on the consent agenda, vote, those would be approved, and then we go to the ones that we have some concerns about, just in terms of procedure.
So, I would agree with that. So Derek, are there anything that in the discussions of these books, since you just recently came, I imagine a lot of these books were probably in the process with Trish,
They're all pretty new, actually.
or were they all just
Yeah,
came since you joined the committee?
yeah, I think there's all, maybe
were
the
there any-
textbooks under review before I joined. They're all pretty new, all new.
So were there any issues that you saw in the discussions?
No, the only one we actually had an issue with, we didn't bring forward. We sent it back to the teacher, so all these ones were pretty wholeheartedly endorsed. I mean, Dr. Heon could speak to it better than I could, but the math books seem especially good. They're a cohesive unit, starting, I think, in 6th grade, all the way through Algebra 2. They're easy to follow along, they're pretty good. And the social studies books were great, too. Do you have any of those?
I do.
Yeah.
Excuse my arm.
So the notation says hardcover, but that was a paperback?
Which said hardcover?
It says in the form, the evaluation tool, it says that they're hardcover books?
For Pi.
They're permabound?
We only had one copy at Park. That was the library copy, which Derek took. And then I got a second copy. This was actually donated by a student to the teacher's classroom. So I got it this afternoon and managed to get through the first 4 chapters. It is quite gripping, actually.
But the ones that we're buying are actually like the permabound?
Yes, the permabound.
Okay.
Yeah.
And for the social studies, are we getting a pilot for these for the first year?
Yes. Yep.
So I think we're gonna try these out for a year, and then if we like them, then we'd actually order it.
And the nice thing about the social studies program is that they have, as I mentioned here, potential for K-3 resources. Next year is social studies review and budgeting, actually, as early as the fall. We're meeting over the summer. And so that would be nice if we had a program that had K-3 continuity for relatively low cost for 5 years of consumable books. It's $46.
Is this a consumable?
That is,
Yeah.
Okay.
It's baked into the cost. Same with the math books. Math books come with consumables too, if I recall. But
yes.
it's baked into the cost. You get them for 5 years.
Okay.
I thought that
You get them every
I
year
thought you
for
liked
5
that.
years.
What happens after 5 years?
And you have to buy them again.
Usually you would get a new book. We're on a 5-year cycle. If you go back to your curriculum review schedule. And so we might go 6. You
Does that
can
mean
buy
there's a book
individual
that comes
years
with it?
for $5 or $10
Every year.
for just the
Yeah, every
digital
year that's in
component.
And
Most
then
of your
the 5 years,
programs,
Then you have to re-up.
most of the programs coming out now have strong digital components. When we're looking at literature for the lower grades.
I love it.
One at a time.
This summer as well. And so that has a I don't know if you got to sign in and given you the login, but there's cute little guys for 2nd grade that go around the maps and show the kids north, south, east, west, and other features of the social studies. It talks to the kids if they go online from home or in class. And, you know, even in 2nd grade, that we have so little time for social studies and science for that matter, because they focus on language arts and math, that rather than having kids copy out questions and copy out things, here, they're, at least a lot of their answers are there, or they're tracing maps, that kind of thing. They can still obviously do writing in a notebook if they're explaining or writing a few sentences. There were other programs where the book was thicker and hardcover, and we'd never get through the material. It would really be a waste. This is much more interactive. You see how colorful it is. The digital pieces are very colorful. So what you want to do is really engage kids in social studies early on, so they have an interest in history and government, and this is who are we as Americans. I mean, they have changed the focus of some of the early topics. It is about myself and my community early on, but by 2nd grade,
if it's not in there.
everything is kind of moved back a year. The America part used to be 3rd grade. Now, communities, instead of 2nd, is 1st grade with several of these programs. This is actually hot off the press. Will be brand new. It was designed for Florida, and it was so many other communities asked for it that they took out the words Florida and all the copies and made them more generic or appropriate to any region of the country, except for grade 4, which across the country is always about your state. So that's why, it would be K3.
So these books, whether they be social studies or language arts or math, are they, you know how we have Spelling City in GMS that's tied to the spelling words, where, you know, Kylie is always having to do something on spell. Are these books and these things being tied to a program that's similar to that, where they can be going and doing other work online and stuff like that directly, like with
Not so
Spelling
much in the
City?
lower grades, because as I say, we don't have the luxury of spending as much time. There is a digital component, but it doesn't have those other pieces necessarily.
So I don't have a problem with Dr. Cochran's suggestion that we take them just as a consent, and if there's specific questions, we can deal with them that way.
Pull it off the consent agenda,
Yeah.
pass, and then we go into the individual item.
Each one of these, just so you can say you took a look at it. Sorry. This is 7th grade.
Ideas math book.
Yeah, those look good too, because I know.
Julie,
This
could you hand me the
this
pies?
Yeah.
have a computer program.
Get it back.
I do, but also I have to get it back
Do
to
these
the
have
teacher.
digital components as well?
Very,
thought so,
very
yeah.
elaborate digital components.
And that comes with the purchase?
It does. It's 5 years hardcover. No, you get hardcover. The 5 years of the soft, which is a journal recording type book that has a lot of the problems in it, so it is write-in. And then 6 years for the digital component. And as it's updated, all the updates come through in the digital piece, both as alerts to the teachers and embedded in the materials. The high school, the 6, 7, and 8 was actually, it says 2014. It was put out last year. Several school districts in our area, not that that's the only reason we would get it, but including Bedford, and we visited Goffstown. We had a committee of 6 of us who visited Goffstown. You actually bought and are using Big Ideas this year for the first time. And the high school component, you'll see copyright of 2015, is literally hot off the press. I got the books last week. We had sample chapters before that. The main author, Larson, if you know, have ever seen math books, he's one of the foremost authors of math books. He's written numerous math books over the years and has a lot of recognition in terms of the math books. And this is a very unique approach. It's marketed by Houghton Mifflin, but it's not published by them. This gentleman has enough resources that he started his own publishing company called Big Ideas Math. And it has numerous features that we would really want in a textbook. They use essential questions to guide the students' learning, a variety of problems, good examples, white space and color. The digital component, the student could literally leave their book at school and just log online and not necessarily have to lug their book, or if they happen to forget it, it's all available online, as well as all of the work is available online. There are extensions for students who need more challenge, who need some remediation. There's a lot of guidance for the teachers. This program, we judge as a committee to be more rigorous than the one we're piloting now. I'm sure that company isn't going to be happy to hear that, but that's okay. They understood. We're very grateful for the pilot this year. There are some similarities, so the transition won't be highly difficult. This company, I just got confirmation today because I tried to pin them down, that they will be able to provide us, even though we've had them in twice. I've really vetted these people. I've driven them crazy. They've been in twice for full days to give us overviews, which really amounted to training. And they will come on June 26th for a full day of training with the middle school and high school. And they will come back on August 21st to do their enhanced digital piece, which includes all new assessments that will mimic the Smarter Balanced assessment. The company who is doing the digital platform for Smarter Balanced and all those little tools and things, I feel like I don't know who I'm talking to today.
She's out there, I wonder, you know.
They, the same company who is doing the Smarter Balance platform is developing the digital assessments for this company. So that's not that we have to practice for the test, but these are things that we want our students to see anyway, not only the drag and drops, but all of the other mathematical features that they're going to see in lots of applications and eventually in the business world if they do something math related.
One of the benefits of this one too, as Dr. Cochran was pointing out, was they combine 7th and 8th in one book. So for that accelerated course, they'd have the same book as the kids taking it in 7th and 8th grade.
Correct. And our recommendation is actually that we only buy that one book for all of the 7th grade. There are several reasons. One, if we happen to have more students who are prepared to move into the 8th grade, the material, the topics, we'll have the resources rather than trying to predict how many of a straight 7th versus this accelerated program do we need. We can encourage kids that we can do it, accept the challenge and so forth. And the cost is just within a couple of $3 or $4 more than the other book. And that way, if our numbers shift from year to year, we'll have the same version. And I was told that some other schools outside of our state have done that and been very successful with that approach.
So is that book going to cover the transition for the 7th graders next year, when they're taking both 7th and 8th grade math?
That book has all of the material from the 7th and the 8th grade book.
Okay.
So you could, with any student or any class, just use the 7th grade topics, or you can use the 7th and the 8th grade topics. One of the problems, we definitely were committed to having something like that. The pilot we had this year also had that component, because in the past, the students have not been exposed to all of the 8th grade topics, and for a variety of reasons. But, and so 8th grade algebra there was a need to spend some time on those 8th grade topics and not exclusively on the Algebra 1, which they would have in 9th grade. So that definitely would be an advantage. The recommendation is that we use this Algebra 1 book, which is the newer book in both grade 8 and grade 9, because they're virtually taking a high school course. That company actually made a different Algebra 1 book that had some review material from 7th grade, and some of the problems were a little bit different to reach a broader, their goal was to reach a broader range of students in grade 8. But I think that in our district, we're committed that, you know, we want lots of students to take Algebra 1, but they, if they're going to get high school credit, they should have the same identical experience as they would with the 9th grade.
So we're expecting Algebra 1 in the 8th grades, and they'll be moving into geometry and
Yes.
as the freshmen?
Yeah,
Yeah.
they've been doing that.
No, I understand that's a,
Yeah.
it's really getting, we've been doing it, but it's really gonna get pushed to the forefront of the 7th grade class this year. That, you know, the everyday algebra and things like that should be actually beginning to phase out in a year or two, correct?
That would be the hope. Right now, like this upcoming year, with no difference in the program, we're expecting 2 classes of Algebra 1 and 3 classes of grade 8 math. With this and some other things that are going on, we would hope that we would have more students who would be, if we can do a better job of preparing kids before grade 7, we should have more kids opting for the accelerated piece and more kids taking Algebra 1. If Tom were here tonight, one of the things that he would be speaking about, Mr. Lechleiter, would be a proposal that we're looking at to have more students in grade 8 take geometry. This year, I believe we have one student whose parents initiated the possibility of them taking algebra and LMS and VLAX geometry. And so we looked at that as a possibility in a more coordinated way. I spoke with the director of instruction at VLAX, and he indicated that if we mass register, if we identified 6 or 8 or however many students who are very strong, not just strong mathematically, but who work well independently and have the technology skills, they would put them in the same section with the same instructor. And then we would look at some ways of supporting that. So that's one of the other things, and Tom's going to talk about it in a little bit more detail when he's here for his next time around. So that's something we're trying to do in conjunction with, so that we can increase that pool of accelerated math kids at the high school. So both ways. And this came out of actually a conversation with the parent at the LMS PTO, who was thrilled to hear what the board was looking at doing and LMS is looking to do with the doubling up in grade 7 math. The problem was that parent's child was currently in 7, and so the answer was, well, what are you doing for the kids who missed that double math opportunity last year? And it got me thinking about, well, we've had parents do this on their own. Why don't we do it in a more structured way? Look at data, look at the students who could be potentially here, and then it would cost us very little money to support these kids and give them just that little bit of extra support, whether it be paying a teacher a stipend to work with them during the intervention block for 22 minutes a day, or Tuesday, Thursday after school for 40 minutes with a stipend, and pay somebody on an hourly. We would probably have people with good math backgrounds out there who would volunteer to work with the group for those who needed it. So,
Well, the other thing that we need to be aware of, I don't know which is the center of the House, but it looks like legislation is going to move very quickly, if not signed off in now or in the fall, but they're going to raise the math graduation to 4 math credits. I mean, it looks like it only needed a vote from, I don't know which side of it needed a vote, but it seemed to overwhelmingly, whichever house it left, almost with everybody voting for it, and I believe the governor will sign it. So for you in the high school, that would mean 4 years of math being a requisite. So that's another thing that, it's in the process. I don't know where the districts fall on that, but I think that, the board has expressed the idea that that's a good idea at times.
To get back to one of your points, Mr. York, Dr. Heon and Principal Rothhaus and I have talked about the everyday geometry. And one of the things that we did talk about was whether or not we would be able to evaluate in January, February, before we do enrollment for next year. This geometry one, I think, made a difference. But a lot of the extra work done in Geometry 1 daily was not geometry work, it was the missing algebra work that's needed to support the geometry learning. So if this model works the way it should, if we're running everyday Algebra 1 this year and everyday pre-algebra, we should be able to make a recommendation about whether or not we'd actually need everyday geometry next year if we're actually addressing those algebra skills needed for geometry by doubling up on algebra every day. So next year would be the earliest that we would be looking at backing off everyday algebra 1, or everyday geometry rather, in favor of addressing those deficiencies earlier. Dr. Han, Principal Rothhaus?
Correct.
So I want to go back to what Derek said. The consumables, free for the first year?
5 years. Not free, I mean, they're baked into the cost, I'm sure, but.
They're included in the cost.
I don't understand what you mean by
When they
that.
buy the book next year, let's say it's $100, it includes the book plus 5 years of consumables.
Right, we have to pay up front,
For 7th and 8th? For this?
all grades.
Okay. So I want to
7, 8, algebra,
Okay. So I want to back up. My question was for what you passed out, the grade 2.
Oh, because I also passed out math, I'm sorry. Next year, we're talking about a pilot, free, nothing. So that we can see if we want to include the other grades. That is 5 years for the writing text and the digital component.
So the pilot covers all 5 years? Or the pilot covers the first
1
year? Then after
And
that,
if we would purchase for 5 years.
oh, so we have to
after
sign a
that.
5-year.
Not until we accept it.
No, but I'm saying, when we decide we want it,
That's
then we
correct,
sign up for.
Because you're paying what
Yes.
would amount to a hardcover price from other companies for 5, but you're committing for the 5 years. And that way they can print these ahead of time and give them to you and have them ready to send out every summer.
Because the price that was in the thing is like $7.27 a piece per student per year.
That's not right.
It's 85 copies and $618.
That's online?
That's what was written in the form, the perk
For
form.
which book?
Grade 2,
Is that Ellen?
Yeah.
the networks.
I don't know who, no.
It says 17 sets equals 85 copies at
Is that handwritten on
618.
their, the
Yep.
teacher's form? They didn't have the right pricing, that's the wrong grade. That's
social
first grade
studies.
is lower because of fewer number of pages.
Yeah, this is the grade 2.
Yeah, they had the wrong, I don't know where they got that price.
Because as Derek hinted at, I'm not a fan of consumables.
Most of them are going to consumables, and like I said, it's really for the lower grades, more student-friendly.
But more expensive.
No, I mean, there was a hardcover book from Time Links, and that book was in the high 40s also. So this is $46.50 for the 5 years of the consumables, so it's under $10 a book.
Okay, I'd like to see the real prices.
She was
'cause-
supposed to have the pilot, there's no cost.
Right,
but
there's
she
no
was supposed
cost,
to
but then
have-
you're
and
signing up for 5 years, so.
You'll see it when the budget
You're not
comes.
signing up for 5 years until Park makes.
No,
that
but I'm saying-
recommendation to- Right, right.
If you go forward with it,
Yeah.
you're committed for 5 years.
But you get 6 years.
Yeah. So does the board, for tonight, wish to make a motion to deal with all of the items that were presented for approval from
I'll make a motion to approve all the presented items.
Second.
Any other discussion? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Thank you.
I'm sorry, who seconded that? Thank you. And that includes the math as well?
Yes.
The item that I didn't think you were including is the English curriculum.
The top one, yes.
Yeah, no,
Yes.
I still want to finish these though, can I just hold on? I'm like halfway through.
Each one?
10 cents a day if you're late.
Since it's, oh.
That's right,
That's
the
my
library
category.
fines.
Who actually checked it out, you?
Mrs. Cullen can.
It's not in your name.
So did you want to cover the curriculum tonight, Dr. Healy?
I'd like to. We did speak to it last month. Some folks weren't here, so I will entertain questions. Still here.
This is the old one.
It's a lot of reading.
I'm trying to figure out where everything was. It's just,
So are there any questions for Dr. Heon?
Math curriculum is easy to look at. It's like multiplication.
so who was part of the team that put together this curriculum?
So page 2, the full, all the names in the.
I thought I read that one.
John, if you haven't gotten that far,
I mean, I didn't.
I
mean
got
to-
farther than that, but I
I didn't mean to be critical, I just don't have
No.
them all committed to
No,
memory.
no.
I don't want to mention any that I didn't remember.
so were the high school teachers on just for continuity with the 9 through 12?
They did work on their portions, and they, actually, what I have, similar to the, when we looked at the math, I have the continuum of skills. What we have been working on are the actual courses themselves, and late last week, I did get the curriculum outlines from the curriculum facilitator. I have not had the opportunity to look at those, and they're not in a format that we can actually put them in the curriculum in that form. So I need to work with the CF and determine, I mean, that was clearly an issue in the math, and we need to resolve it for English as well, to put it in a format that would kind of be friendly with the rest of the document. So just like we did with the math, we thought we'd bring the K-8 forward so that when the teachers leave for the summer, they can feel like this is an adopted curriculum.
So this is, like the math one, it's a framework, right?
It is a framework, I refer to it as a framework.
In the math framework, it's easy to see how the framework translates to curriculum, because it's simple. It's like, you must master multiplication 10 by 10, must do this, must do this. For stuff like this, I guess it's harder to figure out how do teachers then take this and map it to curriculum?
That's what we're going to plan on this summer. I mentioned it under professional learning and instruction. I sent out a survey to teachers introducing what we'll be doing this summer, and for the last week of June and 3 weeks in August, so allowing for vacations in July. I'm planning Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday committees to meet by either grade level, if that's appropriate, or subject areas, to do several things. One is to work on the curriculum subjects that have not yet been adopted. And secondly, to work on, in particular, English instructional units, where they take all these skills and integrate them into units of study, which is what you're
Okay.
asking. So at any one time, which of the several reading, both literature and informational texts, reading items would they work on along with which kind of writing. So there's only 3 types of writing that go through the 3-year, the K-12. And one of those be done, and then those would be in a scope and sequence, which comes first, second, and third. Now, this is a very large task to do that. My goal is that if they were to develop one very strong instructional unit in those 3 days, they would have a model to move forward, and throughout the school year, they might be able to, during their either grade level or team meetings, develop 1 or 2 more. They certainly have been creating units on their own, but this would allow them the opportunity to work with the district template that would be the same for all grades, and spend the time and have their colleagues there, hopefully several colleagues. Obviously, couldn't hope to have all of them there, but several of their colleagues to create these instructional units.
So I'm looking at just grade 3, because it's easy for me to understand. There's probably 45, 50 of these like objectives, ask and answer questions, retell stories, describe characters. Would one of those units basically try and knock off, say, 15 of those, and then there's some sort of test or something that goes with the unit, and then that's how they kind of figure out the students are meeting these objectives, or how does
In
it
a
all come
broad
together?
sense, I guess I'd say yes. It's not quite how you would do that, but they're not chronological when you look at them.
Yeah.
There are several that are somewhat repetitive. In other words, if you look at the literature, the 2 reading categories of literature and informational reading, very similar approach. There's a lot of analytical reading, even in the lower grades. It's referred to as close reading. So you're really looking at not only the structure of the language, but the meaning, the deep meaning. The whole, one of the umbrella design features is that we would do fewer sort of topics and units or themes and do them in more depth. So that depth includes integrating more skills, integrating more writing, doing probably shorter pieces of writing, but more writing, so that each time the students get better at it. That doesn't mean you wouldn't necessarily take one piece and do the writing process and lots of revision, but not every single piece. And doing some writing on the spot there in class, because that's a life skill, and other writing over time with revisions and conferencing and that kind of thing. Some of these aspects we've had in place for a long time. Some of them are a little bit different and tweaked. Beginning of this document on page, I think it's 4 and 5, you'll see several sort of overarching practices. They're not called like the 8 mathematical practices, are very distinct, because math people are quantitative and concrete when they wrote those. But I did include those in this document because I think that they're very important to focus on. So those are guiding practices for all the grades. This is going to be tricky for a while, and the thing that's trickiest about it is that unlike grades K through 5, where because we participated in a pilot way back in 2007, at no charge, we were given the new Envision series, which is tied to the Common Core. Very well, even though they've come out with another version, a revision with some other problems, but those appear in the digital components, which again, we have at no extra charge for that program. We have now, because we budgeted the money for Math First, we will have all of these in the fall with all of the framework skills and knowledge embedded in them for the teachers. We don't have that for language arts. I hope to begin looking at those over the summer and into next year and come back with a recommendation to you for a pilot starting a year from September for language arts. Because even though what we're doing right now has value in that we are choosing literature from their current anthologies that's higher end, more challenging, and we're using trade books that you've been seeing on recommendation. A well-designed anthology, one Basil, and then supplement it. But the notion, especially in the lower grades, is that those skills that you see will be embedded in those in the literature, and literature included in the book, and recommendations for the skills and activities, just like we've had, if you have elementary kids, you know in the K-5, we've used the trophies. And for that time, which is now, that book is 6 or 7 years that we've had it, had all those skills wrapped into it. That's what we need. We need the next, the version that will include this new framework. Because it's not that it can't be done, but if teachers are spending so much time and energy pulling all these pieces together, having to make decisions, is this the right thing or not, that's less time that they're actually spending on analyzing the students' work, creating assessments that test whether, evaluate whether students know and have learned what we want them to learn, and all the other things that we're asking teachers to do. So scrambling to put these materials together, in my view, isn't always the best way for them to spend their time. And even with a series or whatever, they're still going to do some of that. It's just now that they have an enormous task.
Can I add, there's two other complementary pieces here. One is going to be a requirement to write grade K to 8 competencies. And the next is to ensure, once you have the standards and alignment between the standards and the curriculum and the unit development, then teachers actually understand it. And the natural thing for teachers to do is then to notice that, in fact, the grading and reporting practices now don't align with what we're doing. So you have those two big pieces to come with this as well. So it's a huge task. We've been a little bit slower than most districts, a lot slower than some districts, because there are some who had more resources in play and have been, at the point that we're getting to now, 2 to 3 years ago, when they first came out. But there are other pieces to come here. This is still very much a process in ongoing action. It will take 2 to 3 years to put all of these pieces together, to bring the teachers together, to meet, to write, to start to look at the existing report cards, see what maps, what doesn't. Do we create a report card that maps, for example, to the English Language Arts major competencies? If you look at, I've got the grade 4 in front of me, so the major topics are things like key ideas and details, craft and structure, integration of knowledge and ideas. Is that an appropriate structure for reporting, recorded to the standards, or not? And teachers have to actually implement those units for at least a year before they can make that informed decision as to whether a standards-based or a standards-informed structure works well in language arts and or math across K through 8. So there's still a lot of work to come with this.
So why are the 9 through 12 texts listed in the K through 8 curriculum?
Texts.
Yeah, there's a whole section in Appendix B that talks about grade 9 through 12.
Because I anticipated that eventually it'll be all there, and it's just a reference. And I had to, I couldn't put it in Word, so I had to take the PDF and just put it in there. And they're just resource materials.
So the 9 to 12 should slide in.
I'm anticipating that at some point we will adopt the 9 through 12 piece. And these, again, are just resources.
As these units course units become available, will we be able to see them for informational purposes, just to see how this all fits together?
My vision is that we will have them digitally. I'm caught between a rock and a hard place, so to speak, because at first we were sort of on a trajectory to decide on a student information system that could have an embedded digital curriculum component. And rightly so, we needed to slow down that process. And so we will not have a decision on that. But I am meeting separately with both of the vendors on the 2 dates next week and then June, I think it is, to talk about the functionality of just the curriculum aspect, to see if it's even viable. And if it isn't, I already have in mind one or two companies that have separate platforms that are very good, that we should probably go to. What I'm trying to avoid is to create a lot of paper or Word documents that then have to somehow be translated into a digital format. I was hoping to do it, create them digitally initially and save that time and energy, so I'm not sure how that will happen. Once that happens with all these systems, it doesn't matter which platform we went with, they all have a component so that parents can see. They can't obviously edit like the teachers can, but they would be open for the parents. And that's one of the big advantages. And also, the important thing about the digital aspect is that they can be revised much more readily, because instructional units are not things that you want to remain static for an extended period of time. It's possible that some components of the unit do, and then you revise them, and sometimes you realize that the whole unit needs to be replaced.
I'll make a motion to approve the English Language Arts K-8 curriculum framework.
Is there a second?
Second.
Other discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? Thank you.
You need me for, or are you going to look at the policy change?
Yes. We briefly looked at it last meeting, but wanted to have it back when you were actually here. And that is IJL. Did you change the header in this, Michelle?
I did.
Okay. Like something
didn't
doesn't
like-
look right.
I didn't like the other one anymore. I thought this was cleaner.
We're saving on ink, we haven't got that grayed out area.
Time for a change.
So this incorporates the new form into the procedure for selection. And cleans up above where there were conflicting selection criteria.
How they say in court, looking at, questioning a witness, I reserve the right to recall the witness. I would say that, that I encourage our committee, and sometimes I do the developing and sometimes it's brought to us, that we may provide you with additional documentation if it's appropriate, that I think will give you additional information. I guess we looked at this as sort of a minimum, it's a long minimum, about 2 pages of the actual written that would be completed. But they, you know, unless at any time you felt that that also had to be included in the policy. What we left in this policy was primarily matching items to what was in the previous policy, feeling that those were the items that were important to the board when it was previously adopted, and added maybe just a couple of things so that there wasn't a lot more here. And notice that didn't include the text complexity chart, because that would be unique to only reading material and that kind of thing.
Well, given the issues they had up in Guilford, more is probably better than less at this point. And
Well,
we also went through a round of that
Yes, we did.
not too many years ago.
And as many of the committee members as possible are either reading or doing a deep skimming of the material. I'm trying to read as many of them as I can and still get things to both Burke and you in a timely manner. The principals are trying to do some of that reading, so at least if one of us has read it thoroughly or several of us have skimmed it, then we're liable to pick out those things. And I think that we've all talked to the staffs about if there's any sensitive material, that's what needs to be brought to our attention. That's the term I use for that wide variety of texts that could be objectionable to really a variety of parents or communities.
So it needs approval for first reading.
I think it's just an amendment. We should be able to approve it tonight.
Can we approve it tonight?
I think so.
Because it looks like it had gone through a process, and it, both times it was first reading, second reading approval.
That's back when we did the original adoption.
Yeah, but then you reviewed it later and you did the same thing, so I didn't know what the, I mean, I don't have a problem approving it today, because I think
I see
it's,
what you're talking about. The only reason I did that was to show that the board had met on it a couple of times, so tonight will be
Okay.
a review, and if you approved it, I'll just fill in the date.
okay. I'll make a motion to review it and approve it.
A second.
Questions? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstained. Thank you.
Anything else from me?
Not unless, well, we covered the perk. Unless you want to stay for the budget committee discussion. Be always riveting.
It's always fun. Bye, everyone. Thank you.
Good night. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you.
Thank you all.
So Derek, can we say we covered perk?
Yes.
Just, I didn't know if you had
think so.
anything you were going to want to add, so. Budget committee, Brian?
Yeah, there were actually two things that came out of the budget committee. I actually had a discussion with Frank on both of them. One of the things they were talking about they would like to do is on their summer meeting on July 14th is come up with an expected tax rate and more or less come up with a dollar amount as far as for the budget. So they would come to the school and say, you have $21 million or $20 million and make your budget fit into that structure.
You don't want to know my response.
Well,
Public.
I'm running through several in my head that you might
They're
have.
probably similar to what you might be thinking of.
What was the second thing? Because the first one just died.
Well, they want to use past history and kind of like back into it and try to come up with a tax rate by July.
They're just as
You
talented
can't do
as-
tax rate because you don't know revenues.
You know, they're
We're
just,
gonna estimate them.
they have just as many talented people on their staff as we have on ours.
So,
Have at it.
I guess my question back, are you meeting before that meeting?
Yes.
June.
I would say if we present that budget, are they going to approve it? Or are they going to
Oh, no.
look?
No, they're still gonna look at it line
Well,
by line.
no, I mean, so if they say, this is where we want you to be,
No.
and we come in
That
there,
question was asked by one of the members, that they still want to have the ability to look at it, and of course they will, line for line.
So it's kind of like.
but why? We hit their target.
Hey, Brian, hear that thud? That was their lead balloon that just fell. So you can tell them that they
Okay.
have a job to do. We'll see them in the fall.
That's-
What was the
And
second
the other
item?
was,
Are you like happy you signed up for this?
no, I just thought it's like, sitting through that meeting in July is really not going to produce anything, so. The other is, they talked about self-funded, that they don't feel belongs in our budget.
I think
We have to gross appropriate, so how do we do that?
It's a gross appropriation. I think it's been explained
What do they want
a
to do
number
with
of
it?
times over.
Nothing, that question whether or not there's an RSA that says it has to be in the budget.
There's not an RC that says it doesn't.
It's a gross appropriation.
We would have no authority to spend any of the self-funded appropriation
Was this-
expenditures.
Was this new member or old member comments?
It's offset by equal same revenue. That's a phrase that I can use. So. to do
No
the budget,
tax impact.
It's a gross appropriation. We need to have it in there, otherwise it becomes a student activity fund. But it doesn't pass the test of student activity fund, so.
Their process begins when we hand them their budget.
It's an interesting discussion to have, but
Yeah.
I don't know what we can do to legally to scratch that itch.
We got,
Yeah.
yeah, we got.
That's like saying self-funded is more than just, the lacrosse thing.
It's a lunch program.
It's the whole food service
I
program.
guess
Well,
you
I mean,
could
it's
go, you want to self-fund the special ed?
This is no different
I don't know how else to explain
than
it,
2 or
but-
3 years ago, they met in the summer, and they made a determination that they told the town and the school budgets had to be flat. Now, there's nothing in an RSA that says they can say that, just like there's nothing in an RSA that says they can't say that. They can't predetermine the town's budget or the school's budget. All they can do is review and make their recommendations.
I understand.
Thank you, Brian, for being on that committee this year.
So those about the.
So I think the board would be interested to hear whatever number they wanted to bring forward, but we're not willing to commit to hitting that number, because our job is to budget for the educational needs of the community,
Right.
not to satisfy the budget committee.
7 members of the budget
I
committee.
mean, and they're not even ones that commit to that number, if they're still gonna review the budget.
Well, that's
Yeah.
always the question. If I bring you that number,
Then we're good.
we're done, right? Well, no. Well, why would we even strive to bring you the
Look what they did to
number?
the town, where they got the town budget down to where they wanted to. The town went back and said, okay, we're gonna move stuff around to meet our priorities, and then they cut it again. Oh, no, we don't agree with that either.
Yeah.
It's like, nice.
That meeting might be worth watching. Oh, technology report is in our packet.
Did we have an outage or an issue with our servers and stuff about a week ago?
Yes, we did.
How come it didn't make the technology report? Oh, I guess because it's in May. But I would have thought that would have been something that we would have brought, I mean, I tried to get online for 2 days and couldn't.
It wasn't out for 2 days. It was out for less than a full day.
Okay. I tried
No.
it Tuesday and a Wednesday last week. I thought to get on and couldn't, but that's okay.
So it's not in there, but it is mentioned. How did the launch of the new food service POS go?
It happened today. It went extremely well. Again, this was a launch, not necessarily that you want to take place while school is in session.
That's why I asked. I know it's always
We wanted to
interesting.
roll out today, just the high school and middle school. But last evening, we found that when we converted over from mealtime to NutriKids, we had to bring all 3 schools online together. We had 2 trainers here that worked with the staff yesterday on training on the hardware and the software, front end and back end, point of sale as well as the back end, with account reporting. That went well. I sat in a little bit of that in the afternoon. And then today, we launched all 3 schools. I traveled to all 3 schools, witnessed everybody happy. We lucked out a little bit in the middle school because we had 7th and 8th graders out of the building. And then the little kiddos at the elementary, they were fine.
It's a nice little soft launch.
We took, they were so nervous at the elementary school, they took water off so they didn't have another keystroke. They didn't want that extra keystroke, so they took water off, even though they still had it there. So it went very well. There were no glitches. They closed out. It's a few extra steps in this software, but it's from a controlled back end of the house operation. You have to close out breakfast, whereas before we could keep it open, run breakfast and lunch together. So everyone that had to cash out the draws, it went well. They'll be here again. The representatives from the software company will be here again tomorrow. The hardware is excellent. It's all wireless, online, real-time. So we've got pictures, and if you're in one of the schools and get a chance to stop by, We get the kiddos pictures we bring up their account, their pictures there. There's food allergy alerts on this program, so it's very impressive, and we asked for everyone's sense of humor over the last couple of days, so the next day, so that the lines were a little bit longer. But it went extremely well. We didn't have any issues today. We had a little backup issue this morning that we resolved pretty quickly.
Nice. Other questions on technology? And enrollment is in the packet. We're up 11 since the start of the year.
4 of which are the pre-K program, which probably means 4 identified students, so the overall population. The good news is the overall population is up 7, and the pre-K program is only up 4. That's good news at both ends.
And
So we have 4 teachers that'll be in first and second grade, right?
We have a
This year?
count, we started out with 68, we've picked up 6 students in 3 months. We would have to hit 84 in order to exceed the policy guidelines. So we would have to pick up 10 full students before we would have to go to a fifth teacher.
For
It's
first
not,
grader, yeah.
it's conceivable, it's not likely.
Well, there has been quite the little housing construction going on in some of the nooks and crannies of Litchfield. I've come across about a half a dozen 3-bedroom houses that have been built on Page Road and some other locations. So if they're starting to build single-family homes again here in Litchfield, then you guys may want to check with the town just to find out what their building permits are like, so far this year and moving forward, because that's going to begin to impact us, because those are houses that will begin to move the population into the school system. So we may want to make an inquiry on the town of exactly where they see, or if they are seeing, 20 or 30 houses being built, then, there's an opportunity for 20 or 30 to 50 kids. So.
I know there's, I know someone that's a Realtor in town, and she said this is one of the hottest property locations. Again,
Yeah.
like it was before, that houses are gone, they go on the market and they're gone at more than the asking price in a day or two. Some people are getting upwards of 5 offers. And the house that's been foreclosed on my street for 2.5 years now is
Gone.
on the market now. It's been there for a week, so I don't know what the movement is, but it's a small cape, so that's what we may see, so we just want to keep abreast of that. We did actually have, I don't know if you went back and looked at the historical numbers, we actually had 29 more kids show up one year than were registered. Which is,
That would really throw a wrench into all of the plans. It's Mr. Superintendent.
yeah, 29 kids over
They'll
what
all
was
pop in
registered.
the first and second grade, and you'll be going,
Yep,
across 12 grades, it's not too bad, it's just 2 or 3 a grade, but it's when they just hit that 1 or 2 classes that it becomes
yes.
exciting.
And we have a revised student activity fund draft.
That must have just come on today. Did it?
There were pages missing, so
Okay.
I had to repost.
This is simply information purposes for the board. As you recall, we had a discussion with the auditors. It was not a finding, but there was some concern expressed by the auditors in our student activity fund, in addition to the fact that the board has had a number of discussions regarding student activity funds, what is and what isn't. So I've given you some guidelines. It's really extracting some of the information from our auditors, as well as putting together some basic financial control guidelines, if you will, in a manual. So I thought I'd provide it to the board this evening, and then have a discussion at your next meeting regarding that, because that will impact, obviously, some of the content of the board policy.
I think we talked about that going there next year.
Well, good time. Parker.
Yeah.
Bad news, score update.
Are you, you're not giving it, giving it away, so Brian's wife can continue to watch the
Right.
meeting?
Well, I said bad news, that'd be enough, you know?
This is the reason we have meetings tonight, not sitting at home watching.
Hey, it's 8:30, he's 30 minutes ahead of time.
That was the first 30 minutes of the meeting. We more than made up for it in the curriculum section. But that's what we're here to do, so. Oh, that's the whole thing. So there's a whole lot of little things as you look at the, if you scroll down and look at the cash balance.
I was surprised to see that's how it actually shook out.
Yeah.
Yeah, 2,000 here, 3,000 there, 2,000 here.
Well, on the, but there is, 16,000 sitting in there in CHS's account from bus passes and for parking passes. 7,400 on parking passes and 9,200 for bus tickets that I think that the board would need to make some decisions on those funds.
Yeah, the policy that you sent me for review, Michelle, is that in here?
No, not till next week, because we
Okay.
weren't sure if we had to change anything else.
Oh,
After
okay.
the board reviews this.
The other thing that I think we need to figure out a discussion on is the gate account, because I believe, again, that is collection for our athletics, not for the athletics that are then go to, and whatever the sporting authority is for New Hampshire, where we have to pay that. Is-
Yeah,
is
that's
that-
completely different.
So those gate accounts, again, seem to be probably over many, many years, 14 years of, again, collecting revenue. And even if it's as simple as suggesting to the administration where we believe they should use these funds, since they're just sitting here building, I don't know if that truly reflects what we want to occur, and at the same time, I don't believe we want the administrators making a decision of where they think they could go without at least saying money that's not gleaned directly from the students for a student activity should have some board guidance on it or approval of where it's going to be used.
And there's already a policy on gate accounts. So I think,
Okay.
And you'll see in my corrective action plan, I believe I put in clarification for that particular policy, because if you read through that policy, it's somewhat confusing, at least was to me. Because on one hand, the policy states that the gate receipts belong in, the revenue belongs in the general fund. But then the policy also goes on to say that it's discretionary as to the recommendation of the principal with the approval of the business administrator to expend those
to
funds.
expend it.
So if it goes in the general funds, it can't be discretionary spending.
Correct.
If it stays out, it can be. So it's just maybe we need to tweak that after I get some
I mean, I would-
clarification from you folks.
I would say we would almost want to have a separate fund. Not in, I mean, and maybe we can't do it, I don't know.
Right.
That's not a student activity fund,
It's
but
not a
it's
student activity.
the gate fund.
And that's what, I'll show you next week the next meeting is based, I'll give you my recommendation as to what these accounts truly are, based on the 5-point test that I'm in the process
Yeah.
of working through with the administrators.
But I would think, I like the idea that money that you collect at the gate for it's really for student performances, whether it's an athletic or a drama, that goes into account that somehow can be used to
Right.
either maintain those facilities. I know that, like, the drama club's always looking for lights. They want to add lights. That might be one way to get it. We can get it as an out-of-budget. We had talked about when we put the fences in, that we would need some way to maintain those fences over time. And that if we were charging admission for athletic events, that might be one way to use some of that revenue to do maintenance, whether they need new locks, new gates, all those things wear over time.
And drama usually spends money on costumes or rental of microphones and things like that.
Yep.
That's a cost that's inherent in.
Well,
the
again, the
production,
gate
so.
receipts could easily be used for maintenance and upkeep of our scoreboards.
Yep.
Because, we have, for the longest time, we never maintained them when they broke down, but,
never had money.
in the sense, there was, football has $8,900 sitting in there. They could have fixed the scoreboard 4 or 5 times over, and the, softball and baseball, their scoreboards weren't working there for a while, and we used end-of-year funds, but again, if there's things here, and I think that this is where, hopefully, just some, Frank, as you guys are going through this and having discussions, you can come back and say, these are the plans for these individual funds, and at the same time, I can't believe all of these, funds, pep rally, girls soccer and all these things have all been raised in this year.
Oh, no, they roll year over
So we
year.
need to begin to use these things in an appropriate ways that the district.
Well, it's interesting, and again, I don't want to get into a deep discussion, I wasn't planning on it this evening, but you've got, the class of 2007, still got monies there. We as a school district cannot hold those monies once that class graduates. That's illegal, and if you want a legal opinion on that, we have an agency agreement with students of the school district. Once they are no longer students of the school district, we cannot be the custodian of that money. We must hand that over to that graduating class, either to the treasurer or wherever they so direct us to send that money. We have no legal obligation, nor do we have a custodial obligation to hold on to that money. And you really don't want it sitting in the school district, you've got some money.
So that would be the same thing for class 9, 10, 11, and 12, correct?
But I thought I read in the policy,
The policy states 7 years, but again, that contradicts financial law. We have no,
okay.
and you
I
really.
knew I read it
that's-
somewhere.
And again, I don't want to get into it too much, but
Right.
that's a risk to the district holding on to that money because it's just sitting there with nobody being responsible for it. So you really want to, when that class graduates, you want to get that class president, and get that class treasurer and say, what do you want us to do with your balance? And either cut them a check, because it's their money. It's that class that now moves on to bigger and better things, that money should go with them.
Can't they begin to use those funds? Once they have senior week, isn't that a point where they should have made some decisions at the end of May as their student leadership?
Well, their advisor should be.
And
directing them to that.
be using that
They vote.
money in that week?
I mean, they vote the last couple of years, and they do at graduation, the senior class does a presentation. I know they've donated to the Allison Korf Scholarship,
Right.
so that could be perpetuated. And I just assumed they were donating all the money. I didn't realize that in some cases, it looks like they might have put 3,000 in, and there was whatever, 1,500 or whatever the balance
I
remaining.
understand one class, and I'm not sure which class it was, had something to do with capital improvement here, either in air conditioning or, for some reason got into this really, but it never happened. Because again, the class, they come up with this great idea, but it's gonna take now some time to bring it to the completion. So they go, there's summer, and then they're off to college or to work or wherever, and that money has sat there. No one kind of followed up on it. That's why you don't want it on deposit. You really want to give it to the class and wish them well, or give it to the class president, the class treasurer.
So, and you may not know, why is the class of 2015?
Loaded?
Yeah.
Because they haven't spent it.
Don't they have the prom and stuff like that to put on next year?
But prom tickets pay for the prom.
Well, they are loaded.
That's class twos, maybe they've done a pretty good job making sure
But-
that their classmates.
Man, they've been breaking arms.
They had
They're being
12-5.
frugal. They're holding it for the senior year.
They had 12-5
Yeah.
to start the year.
Well, they're down to 8.
I don't know
Spent
what,
6 on
They
something.
spent 6 on something.
yeah, okay.
I mean, they could use this for their senior trip and stuff like that, is
No.
correct?
Yeah.
Or, their trips to New York, well, the New York trip is just,
It's
it's
student
anybody.
directed, however they want to spend it, they spend it
Yeah, okay,
with the review of their advisor.
okay. So we'll see the policy on the 28th, right, Michelle? Okay, we can look at that again. Policies to amend. JLF reporting child abuse and neglect.
This is an update required by a change in procedures by DCYF. Michelle actually went on and their website and used excerpts from their language. And I made one change to it. And it was
There was no immediately there, and you added immediately.
right, in italics after the strikeout by telephone, and then immediately notify the school principal that a report has been made. And the rationale for that is that in a situation that is a mandatory reporting situation, if a child is at risk, which is potentially at risk, which is the only time that you report, the person who becomes aware of it does the reporting. But that's information that administration needs to have to be able to make sure that the situation is handled to minimize any potential situations. In some cases, DCYF will instruct the school to actually not let the child go home at the end of the day until they investigate the situation. But in other cases, depending on the situation, there may be a need to coordinate resources. There may be a need to modify how the school is addressing discipline issues or other issues with the home. And it's important to have that piece in there, even though it's not on the DCYF doesn't care what our policy is. We just need to make sure our policy is consistent with their processes. The old procedure was that the person who learned of the situation would report to the principal, and the principal would report. My understanding is that the change was made because there was concern that principals were filtering out potential things, and they wanted to take that option away. The mandatory reporting law is there so that if you suspect it, it's reported. There's no decision to make.
So I don't know if it's in the law. I guess I'm partially bothered by the person notifying DCYF having to give the identity of the person or persons suspected of being responsible. I mean, what if you don't know?
Well, then that would be appropriate to say they don't know, but this is something that concerns them. If a child, reports to school with bruises or something like that, and they don't know, then that's certainly something that they should be notifying about. But, as far as liability for the reporter, there isn't. It's my understanding that it's, as long as it's a good faith report, it has to be done.
And maybe I'm just sensitive because what's going on down in Mass with Boston Children's Hospital and the Pelletier family.
Mm.
And I'm not implying that anybody in the district would do that, but I guess if you have to, you have to. Or if you don't know, you just have to say you don't know.
So my question is how do you make a determination whether a child is in danger or not in danger if somebody calls and makes a report? Wouldn't automatically there be a presumption of danger if somebody has gone to the point of making a recommendation?
If the individual reports something to you, there's no decision for you to make. You must report it. And you can provide additional information that gives context to allow them to make a determination. But the purpose of the mandatory reporting as I understand it, is to put the obligation on you to report, knowing that there will be some over-reporting.
So
But the goal is zero under-reporting.
if a student comes in and says, my mom or dad gave me a spanking yesterday, does that rise to the level of having to make that call?
I would think it would be something more than just a report of a spanking, but if the teacher sees, maybe some behavior and the child has changed, bruising that's not, that just doesn't seem right, child is withdrawn, child is not, engaging with peers the way they used to, things like that. I mean, teachers see them on a daily basis. It might be difficult in the beginning of the year, but teachers get to know their kids, I think, fairly quickly. And if they're seeing something in that child that is not that child, and the child is reporting something, it's, I think, right there. But, I mean, there are some kids often share, especially little kids, will share a lot with
Yeah.
teachers. And, there could be, something going on at home that the child shares, the teacher hears, this is me, this is concerning.
Well, my key on this is twofold. We're now, what may be one person hearing a story and saying, okay, this is a big concern. Maybe another person hearing the story and saying,
But see, that's,
because there seems to be a lot of arbitration in this process.
if I can weigh in, I used to do quite a bit of juvenile law in Massachusetts, and I don't anymore, but really that's something for DCYF people, I think, to figure out.
Okay.
If a teacher is concerned, that's why they're reporting. Then DCYF, and I know in Massachusetts, DCF, they either screen it in, which means that there's a concern and they're going to continue following the family and following the issue, or they screen it out. They investigate it, they find that in this particular case, it's not a worry, it's not a concern, they don't have to follow the family. It's screened out, and that's the end of the report. So I think it's better for a teacher, if a teacher is concerned that there's something going on, better to report and have DCYF get involved and make a determination.
I think the typical advice is, if you're thinking that perhaps you should call,
Call.
you should call.
Yeah, yeah. That would be the best judgment of an individual.
Better news.
Get one back.
Cut the score in half.
Just
Just trying to keep it safe for those watching both.
Cut the score.
Is there a motion? I think we could just treat this as an amendment.
Yeah, we can.
Because we're not really changing,
No, that's-
we're just aligning with what the law says we have to do, so.
I make a motion to approve the changes to policy JLF.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Thank you. So we need to, did we change the procedures too?
No. The procedures,
It's informational.
those
Yeah.
procedures, the original procedures came right from them,
Okay.
and so I just attached
Yeah,
it
if we're
again.
not changing them then, okay. Questions on the manifest? The large stack of them.
Did you guys sign them over there?
Second round of public input? Seeing none? Dr. Cochran has suggested that we should start accepting tweets and read them as the second part of public input.
No.
He knows better.
We would have to definitely screen them before we read them out
And
loud.
I said that because as we're sitting here discussing, you all got an email. We all got an email from our Director of Guidance, Jody Callanan, indicating that there were 17 students who achieved the 3.92 GPA, and I was sitting here, my comment to Mr. Miller was, this might be an interesting concept, so, you tweet it and we read it out to the audience. I said, I don't like that concept with the tweeting when I'm listening to sports shows. If I'm watching the NFL channel, I want to talk to somebody or listen to somebody who's a former All-Pro who knows what they're talking about, not Bill from Jersey. and when he thinks about the draft pick, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Oh, that's funny.
So we are going to go into non-public session under RSA 91-A:3, Roman numeral 2, A through C. A, the dismissal, promotion,